everybody, welcome back for another clear blue tiles video. If you watched the clear blue tiles custom quilting video and used my mini quilt pattern, you've got some of these leftover half square triangles. We are going to use these today and make a really fun zipper bag. We're going to be using the clear blue tiles essential set today, and we're going to learn a different way to use our clear blue tiles. If you like zipper bags, I do have another tutorial on my channel called Easy Zipper Pouch Tutorial. You'll see this has a nice little leather piece in the middle. This is the little scrap leather piece that comes with the Kimberbell storage tote. In the video for this, I teach you how to make this bag. You can tell it's made out of scrap fabric. Put in the zipper, and we use fusible fleece for lining. The bag we're going to make today is going to be quilted using the clear blue tiles. We are going to use some batting, and we're going to put the zipper in a different location, and I'll show you how to add an optional wrist strap. Let's go over what we're going to use today. You're going to need your clear blue tiles essentials set, your clear blue tiles USB. This comes in your set, and I've got some tiles pulled. I'll show you what I'm using. My scrap triangles are 2.5 inches square. I'm going to arrange them as 2 pinwheels and sew them together. If you don't have the little half square triangles, you can use 2.5 inch squares. You'll need 8 of them. Or when this is sewn together, this will be 4 by 8. You can get a 2 by 8 piece of scrap fabric. You could get a couple of jelly roll strips. Whatever you have to come up with the size we're using today will make the same size bag. You can also use scrap fabric and make this different sizes. In addition to the fabric we're using to make our fabric pinwheels, this is going to be the front of the bag. We're going to need some other cuts of fabric. I'm making mine all out of scraps. I believe I have fabric from the Balboa line and the Seashore Drive line. This is Sherry and Chelsea of Moda Fabric. Even my linings are going to be different. We'll go through measurements as we work through this because there's no written pattern for this. I'm doing this as we go. So you'll see why I don't have exact measurements, but you'll learn how to figure out how much fabric you need. I've got a couple of partially used fat quarters. These are going to be for my lining. I have a piece for the back of my bag. I have a 2.5 inch strip here. This is going to be the top front. And I have a longer strip I'm going to use to make the wrist strap and the little loop that's going to hold my strap on the side of the bag. I'm also going to use 1.5 inch D-ring. The strap is optional. You'll see as we construct it, you can put the strap on, you can leave the strap off, whatever you like. I'm going to make my strap detachable. I have a regular keychain loop here, and I have one of these little clasps. I'll put in the description box below what these are called. I got these in Amazon. I use these for jewelry making. I'll be able to use this to make the wrist strap detachable. I also have a length of zipper here. This is a cutoff from one of my projects. It's a by Annie zipper. You'll see that the zipper is not attached to it. You're going to learn how to use a zipper jig today, how to get this zipper onto the piece of zipper fabric. You'll also need some scrap batting, and I have some Pellon SF101. This will be optional. We'll also be using our light mesh cutaway stabilizer, Kimberbell paper tape, and I'm going to be trying this Dritz fabric glue stick today. The tiles I think I'm going to be using today are an 8 by 10 finished block, 4 by 10 finished block, and 2 by 10 finished block. I'm going to use my 9.5 by 14 inch hoop today. This will help me be able to embroider a few of the steps at the same time, make this go a little bit faster. If you don't have a hoop that's this big, you can probably use a smaller hoop and do each step one at a time. In addition to an embroidery machine, you will need a sewing machine. The first thing I'm going to do is sew my blocks together. I'm going to make 2 pinwheel blocks and sew the pinwheel blocks together. If you don't like pinwheels, but you're using your scrap half square triangles, you can turn them, make different arrangements, make your block look completely different, make it look however you want it to look. You can do something that looks more like a flying geese. You can line them all up to go the same direction. Just play with it, find an arrangement you like. Maybe you like one pinwheel and you want to put something on the ends of the pinwheel like that. However you want your blocks to look. I'll go ahead and do the sewing off camera. I'm going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just sew 2 together, 2 together, 2 together, 2 together, and then sew them all together until you've got one solid front piece. Here's my little blocks all sewn together. I cleaned up the edges. I got rid of the fraying threads. This measures about 4.25 by 8.25. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry if it's not. I have a 2.5 inch strip here I want to make sure it's at least as long, if not a little bit longer than my blocks. It is. This is fine. I don't have to do anything else with it. I'm going to be quilting both of these in my hoop at the same time. They're going to have batting and they're going to have a lining fabric. I pulled a couple of fat quarters to use for the lining. You're going to have a front and back of your bag and you need lining for both pieces. These are both partially used. I'm working with scraps from my stash, so I'll just pick one at random. And what I want to do is make sure that I'm going to have enough to line these two pieces. Here's my scrap fat quarter. I know I'll be working with both of these pieces in the hoop at the same time. I've got plenty there. I've got extra. I'm going to trim off the top piece. That's going to get in the way. I'm going to give you an estimate on this. This is about probably 13.5 inches by 9 inches. That should be plenty. I know I'm going to be cutting this extra off. I'm just going to leave it like this for the moment. I'm going to add some Pellon SF101 that's fusible to the back of this piece and the back of this piece, not to my bag lining. I don't think that that's going to need it. This is going to give a little bit of extra stability to the front of my bag. If you've never used Pellon SF101 before, it's similar to Kimberbell's fusible backing. You can use that as well. I happen to have a scrap piece of the Pellon. That's why I grabbed this to measure it. I'm just going to lay it out and you might be able to see that it's shiny. It feels bumpy. And then the other side is very smooth. The bumpy side is what you want touching the wrong side of your fabric. That's the fusible part. I'm going to lay it like that, and then I'll trim that, and then I'll lay this out further down and get a piece that's the right size and trim that, and then iron this on. I've got my fusible on the back of my two little pinwheels. This is the bag front. Our zipper is going to go here, and then this will be on top of the bag. I have my fusible on the back of that. Let's talk about selecting our tile size for our quilting. This is a 2.5 inch strip. I pulled the 2x10 finished block size tile for this. That's going to be perfect. I actually want my quilting on this to extend past the length of this piece here because I'm going to be attaching a zipper. I don't want to have to worry about lining up my quilting on the strip here and getting it exact when I'm attaching my zipper. For this piece, I pulled the 4x10 at the beginning, and that's the block size I showed. That will work. You can see it fits really well this way. It extends a little bit above and a little bit below. I wasn't thinking too much about my seam allowances. You can also use a 4x8. That's probably going to be a better fit for this. I'll use the 4x8 tile for the front of this bag. Let's talk about marking these pieces so we can start doing our quilting. If you've watched any of my other clear blue tiles videos, you know I like to use the paper tape to help with marking the tile. You can use the water soluble pen. You can use this and write right on your fabric, but I actually like using the tape. I find it easier because then I just peel it off and nothing has to get wet. The center of my block is right here. That's where I want to line up my tile center. I'm going to put a piece of tape right there, grab my tile, and this is the 4x8. That's the one I'm going to go with. Trying to make sure that I line up right on the center. And this is actually really easy to line up because your fabric intersections fit. You can even mark it before you put the tile down because you know where your fabric pieces meet in the center. That's exactly where I'm going to want that. Now, this has arrows. I'm going to use non-directional quilting for this. The arrows don't matter. If you want to line up and mark the arrows, you can. What I am going to mark is the top center and the bottom center. This is going to help me make sure that I've got everything in the right spot when I have it in the hoop. I'm going to put some tape down there. And I'm just going to put a little line here and a little line here. This is just for my own reference. I might even do these sides as well. I'm not lining this up with another block. You probably only need the center mark, but I'm going to double check my location on everything before I start stitching it out. So these additional marks will help me do that. On this one, I'm also going to make a mark here that I'm using the 4x8. I'm writing it on the piece of tape. I want to make sure I remember that when I go over to my machine. Let's get our little fabric strip. I want this in the center. I'm using the 10-inch length, so I'll have a little bit extra on either side. Not really crucial for it to be completely centered. We know we'll be cutting off a little bit of that quilting. And then I'll mark the top and the bottom, or sides, depending on your perspective. I guess it looks like the left and the right sides on the camera. That should be all I need for this. On this one, on my tape, I am going to write 2x10. And we're going to do these together in one hooping. If they don't fit in one hoop for you, you can do these separately. One and then the other. I've got a nice piece of scrap batting here. This is Hobbs 80/20 batting. This is a cutoff from the bottom of a quilt from a long arm project. You can see I've got plenty of space here. Let's load our stabilizer in our hoop. You'll see I have seams in my stabilizer. I pieced together some scrap pieces of stabilizer. I'm not worried about the seams for this project. Make sure it's tight, hand tighten, screwdriver tighten. Let's head over to our machine. I've got this lime green Floriani thread on my machine. I'm going to go with it. It matches the fabric today. I'm on a Baby Lock Meridian. I'm using my Clear Blue Tiles USB that comes with your Essentials set. I do have a few other files on my USB, so you'll see some other things on here. We want to go to Embroidery, Files, Quilting. My machine uses PES. Select the file type you need for your machine. These are the files that come on your USB. I'm going to use the spring design for this one. I'm going to select spring. Here's what's going to be different than the other Clear Blue Tiles videos I've done before. Instead of using the Clear Blue Tiles version, we're going to use the block by block version because we're going to add batting and make this project in pieces and stitch it together. Select your block by block. And I'm going to add the 2 front piece files. My strip is a 2x10. I'll start with that. I can see that right there on the screen. I'm going to hit set. I'm going to move it over a little bit. And then we'll add my other file for my pinwheel front panel. And that's the 4x8. And I'm glad I wrote that down because I would have forgotten and used a 4x10. And honestly, it really wouldn't have mattered. It just would have gone on and off the fabric. Back to our block by block, but let's use the 4x8 right there at the bottom. We'll hit set. They're right on top of each other. I need to move them. I want to give myself enough space in between these, but not too much space. Remember my little piece of batting that I have? I'm going to save this to the memory of my machine in case something happens or I get interrupted. We're good to go. Let's hit embroidery. Since we added 2 separate blocks, the machine has it all lined up to do this block first and then this block. I'm going to do something called color sorting, and that will help this go a little bit faster and allow me to work on both blocks at the same time. We need to hit the layout button, and then you need to press this button right here with the 2 dark threads and the 1 light thread. Then you want to press layout again and check to make sure that the colors are sorted. Do you see how that changed? 2 blue, 2 orange, 2 blue, 2 orange, and then there'll be 2 green. I need to save this to my machine again because I've sorted my threads. Our colors are all sorted. This is going to let us work through this faster. We have a batting placement, batting tack down, fabric placement, fabric tack down, and quilting. As we're working through this, we're not only going to complete our front panels, but we're also going to add our lining to the back. So pay attention to our order of operations here. Get your hoop on the machine. The first thing we're going to stitch out is our batting placement lines. I have the green thread on my machine. I'm going to stitch out my batting placement lines. I've got my placement line stitched out. Let's grab our scrap batting. Easily big enough. Make sure you cover those placement lines. You can work with a big piece of scrap batting like I have here, a couple pieces, whatever works. Now we're going to stitch our batting tack down line. The tack down lines have stitched. We want to trim away everything outside the tack down lines. We want to keep the batting here and the batting here. Next we're going to stitch out our fabric placement line. Once your placement lines have stitched, we're actually going to take our hoop off the machine. We're going to place our lining fabric on the back, and then we'll place our front fabric. I've got my hoop off my machine. I'm going to flip it to the back, and I can see my fabric placement lines. If I'm working with 2 pieces of fabric, I need to make sure that everything is covered for this piece and this piece. I've got 1 piece. This is the inside front of your bag. So your fabric is going to go right side up. You should be staring at the right side of your fabric. Here's where I can measure this and get you a measurement. But remember that the measurement here also depends on how close and how far these are apart in your hoop. This is an 8.5 by 12.5 inch ruler. You could cut your piece of fabric that size. In fact, that's a great size. What I'm going to do is trim up this piece of fabric. I've got the selvage here. I'm just going to leave it. It's bigger than 8.5 by 12.5. This is going to work. Back of the hoop, lining fabric, right side up. Remember, this is the inside of your bag, so you want the lining fabric to be facing you. You need to make sure your fabric placement lines are going to be covered. Check all of those, and then I want to tape this down, but I don't want to push on this and move my stabilizer, so I have to add something underneath to support it. I can either do that by holding it or add something underneath. I have this little wool felt square for pressing. I'm going to set this down, and that supports it. I can start my taping. You want to tape all sides because you don't want this to shift and get caught in your embroidery machine. Pull out my little felt pad. You can see I've got it taped all the way around, lying nice and flat. Let's flip to the front. Now we need to place our two front pieces. Let's start with placing our strip. This is where our little lines are going to come in handy. These little lines here that I marked line up right here with the edge of the batting tack down. You can line it up and slide that up, and I know it's centered. And again, this piece, it's going to be quilted from here to here, which is further than this piece. So it doesn't have to be perfectly centered. It's okay if it's not. I have this where it needs to be. Here's my fabric placement, and the fabric tack down is going to be right there along with it. This is where I'm going to try that little glue stick. You can use tape and tape it around the edges. This is a Dritz fabric glue stick. It says it's water soluble, and it says to allow to dry before stitching. I'm going to put a piece of tape right here. I'm going to pull this up. I guess I can stick it on the fabric. Just a little bit here and there. See if it helps it stick. Let's just try that. Oh, yeah, it helps it stick. I'm going to add tape anyway. I'm not sure this is going to be enough. I've already got tape here up at the top, tape here at the bottom. I'm going to leave my little dot and the lines. I'm going to double check it when I get to the machine, make sure it's centered. I'm going to add a little bit of tape on the sides. We're going to place our pinwheel panel. This is going to be a tight fit, and if you remember, I trimmed mine to sort of square it up. I can tell just by looking at it that it fits inside of that fabric tack down line. What does that mean? That means I better tape this because it's going to stitch the fabric tack down line, and it probably won't even catch my fabric for this. So I'm relying on the quilting to hold this in place. Knowing that, and knowing that this is inside of these lines, I really don't need to worry about this being centered or anything. I'm going to go ahead and pull off all these marks. I know it fits. I know it's not going to run off of anything. So we'll take those off. I need to tape this all the way around. I don't trust the glue stick. What can I say? Good thought, but I don't think it's going to work today. How I'm going to tape this is right along the edge. That way, if it gets caught in any of the quilting, I don't have to worry about picking it out. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If the tape gets caught up in the seam allowance, that's fine. I've got everything taped down. Everything's nice and secure. Let's go over to our machine. Here's where we are with our threads. I'm pretty sure this is going to be fine. It's all centered within the fabric tack down, but let's advance it for fun. Let's have a look for it. I've got my crosshairs right here. That looks like the center of that design. Maybe a little bit low. Let's see how I did. My little dot is right there. I'm going to hand crank the needle. That actually looks correct. I'm not dead center on my machine. It's down and over a little bit. So I'm comfortable with where this design is placed. I'm going to go ahead and take off the tape. And then I'm going to back my machine up to the fabric tack down. It's going to stitch out both our fabric tack downs, and while it's tacking down the front fabric, even if it's just going around the front fabric because mine are so tight, it's tacking down that backing fabric at the same time. And then when we do the quilting, it's also doing the quilting on the inside. An option for your quilting, which I'm not going to do, if you want, you can match your bobbin thread to your top thread. That way the color of the quilting on the inside of your bag is the same on the outside of your bag. My machine likes a 90 weight bobbin thread, so I'm not going to put my 30 weight embroidery thread in the bobbin. I'm going to leave my white bobbin thread. Let's go ahead and do our fabric tack down lines. Next, we're going to stitch out our quilting. I recommend sitting and watching your machine, especially if you've got a tight tack down like I do. This is all stitched out. Let's take this over to the table and have a look. I love the green. I hope it's showing up on camera. This came out great. Love the spring design. Perfect for this project. My little pinwheels look really good. I did catch a little bit of tape, but I'll be able to peel that off, no problem. Let's look at our lining. You can see the design here. I have the white bobbin thread. It looks wonderful. That's going to be the inside lining of the bag. I'm going to take this out of my hoop, set the whole thing aside. We'll trim and assemble all the parts together at the end. We have a couple options to measure for our back. I pulled an 8x10 finished block size. You can see how I have this laid out. Top strip, the zipper will go here, the bottom piece. 8 is plenty wide enough. 10 is longer. You can probably use an 8x8, which would end about here. I'm going to go ahead and go with the 8x10 so that my backing piece will be a little bit bigger and I'm not so worried about matching up the quilting with the front piece when I put it together. Now that I've got my tile size picked out, I can cut my scrap fabric. This is going to be the back of my bag. That looks good. It's bigger than the tile, which is fine. We're doing block by block, and since this is bigger than the tile, I'm actually not going to need to make any tile markings. I just need to remember that I picked 8x10. I'm going to cut that extra off, cut it bigger than my tile. That piece is ready to go. And then I also need a lining piece. Since I have this piece cut, let's grab our lining fabric. I've got this bright, I don't know what that's called, chartreuse? Is that the right color? It's that really, really bright yellowy green. It can be bigger too, it doesn't matter. It just needs to be at least that big. I'm going to set these aside. I'm going to grab my 8x10 tile again, and I'm going to look at my batting. Got this nice scrap batting piece. Big enough. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and cut that. I put fusible on the front. I don't necessarily need it on the back, but I've got some scrap pieces here. Let's see what I can come up with. I have the fusible ironed on my piece of backing fabric, and I took a minute and pressed the wrinkles out of my lining fabric. I need to use my big hoop again. You can see I've got more of my piece together scrap stabilizer, hand tighten, screwdriver tighten. Let's head over to the machine. I need to load my file. I picked the 8x10 size. Grab that off my USB. And remember, we're using the block by block for this project. Block by block. And then I want the 8x10 right there. That's all I need. I'm ready to go. We're going to start with a couple of the same steps, so I'll speed that up and put that to music. Batting placement line, put your batting down, batting tack down, trim, and fabric placement line. And then I'll stop after that. Here we go. See how I got a little bubble in my batting? I'm going to trim this. And then I'm going to tape it because the batting placement line goes around twice. So I'll catch it on the next time it goes around. The fabric placement line has stitched out. Let's take this over to the table. We're over at the table. I'm going to flip this over to the back. I've got my little wool mat again to help support this. We want to put our back lining fabric. So this is the inside of the back of the bag. It's like you've opened the bag and you're looking at the inside. You want the right side facing up. You need to make sure it covers those placement lines. And then tape it down, just like we did for the front part of the bag. Tape it all the way around. Got this taped all the way around. I'm going to flip to the front. And this is why we didn't have to use our marks on our clear blue tile. Normally you use the tile and you make the marks. We're doing block by block, and this piece of fabric is bigger than the placement line, so you don't have to worry about centering this piece of fabric. I am going to go ahead and add some tape to this to make sure that it stays in place while it does the tack down and the quilting. We're ready to go. Front fabric, I can see my lining fabric, double checking, making sure it's right side up facing me. Let's take this back over to the machine. Back at the machine, we're going to do the fabric tack down and then the quilting. this is all done, I'm going to go ahead and take this off my machine, take it out of the hoop, and set it aside. We're going to start on our bag construction. We have a few things to get ready. I need to get my zipper ready, and then I'm going to make a tab and then a wrist strap for my bag. We'll do that second. Let's get our zipper ready. I'm going to use this Zipper Jig. This is by the Gypsy Quilter. This is going to help me get my zipper fabric loaded onto the zipper pole. It has a number 3 and a number 5. I always use the number 5. Here's the front of your zipper. You want to place this in with the back facing you. You slide it into the slot like that. I've separated my zipper. This is nice because this is the edge of the zipper. You see I've got this nice fabric here. You can do it like this with the fabric cut off. It's just easier when you've got the nice clean edges. Now this is the front. I need to turn it around. You're looking at this from behind. Going to slide one side in, slide the next side in, and then pull. There you go. Take this out. It's ready to go. I like to do when I work with zippers, until it's sewn in the bag, I put a pin or a clip. These are the little quilty clips at the end. You can put a pin through it just to make sure that I don't accidentally pull this off the zipper and I have to set it up again. I want my bag to have a wrist strap. That's going to require a little bit of hardware. I showed this at the beginning. This is a 1.5 inch D-ring, a keychain, and a little clip. The D-ring is going to attach to my bag. In order to do that, I need to make a little fabric strip attachment. This is a nice long 2.5 inch strip. I'm going to use that for my tab to attach this and for my wrist strap. I cut off the selvage. As far as how much to cut, I always like to cut more rather than less. I'm sure this is going to be plenty long enough, but I'm going to start with the 5 inches. I know it's way too big. I know I'm going to cut that down, but that's okay. It'll be easier to work with on camera. 5 by 2.5 inches. What you want to do with this, place it wrong side up. Actually have to turn it towards me. I'm going to take it to your iron, fold it in half and press it, and then you'll bring the raw edges in like that, and then you'll fold it in half and press it again. Let's make sure it'll fit in my D-ring. This is a tiny D-ring. I only have little tiny ones or big ones. That'll work. Let me go press it and show you what that looks like. I folded it in half and pressed it. Then I brought my raw edges inside to that fold and pressed it again. I'm going to double check and make sure this will fit. That'll fit really nice. What I'm going to do is take this over to my sewing machine. I'm going to run a straight stitch along this edge and along this edge. Here's what that looks like. A nice straight stitch. My D-ring is going to go on this. We're going to trim this. This is going to be much too long. But let's just go ahead and get that looped. I'm going to set that aside with my zipper. I want to make my wrist strap. I've got plenty of fabric here. If you have a bag with a wrist strap, you can measure the strap and make it the same length. I'm making a random size loop. That looks long enough. That looks good. Let's measure that. That's about 10 inches. So the total length will be 20 inches because this is folded in half. Here's the 10. I'm going to lie it down on the fabric fold. That looks pretty good. Set that aside. Now I have the 20-inch piece of fabric. So it's 20 inches by 2.5 inches. I'm going to do the same thing I did right here on the tab. Fold it in half and press. Bring in the raw edges to the inside, fold it again, press, and then run a stitch along the sides. I've got that stitched down. I want to make sure that's going to be long enough, plenty long enough. That's great. I'm going to grab my little keychain, and I'm going to look for what I call the sloppy edge. That's going to be this edge. See how it doesn't quite match up, but if you look at it from the outside, it looks clean. So the sloppy edge is going to be my inside edge. I'm going to loop that on like this. Now we've got raw edges here, so I want to tuck these under and make it look clean. Fold to the center, like that, like that. Your raw edges are now folded into the center. You see that? And then you can run a couple of stitches and tack it down. I just want the pin there to hold this. I'm going to go over to my sewing machine, stitch here, 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 and here. Or you could do a zigzag stitch and go back and forth, anything you want to do on that. Let me stitch that and I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like. I've got that sewn together. If you don't like the way that looks, before you sew that together, you take your fabric. Remember how I had you fold it in half, go like this and sew it? You can fold the top edges down like that. You would iron that and then do the fold in half and fold in half like this. Then you get a clean edge like that, and you'd have that on both sides. Obviously this isn't staying because I didn't sew it together. But then you would fold that and then stitch that together. Either way, you get a nice clean edge. My wrist strap is done. I'm going to double check and make sure it fits. That's actually a really good length for me. We need to trim our pieces and start putting our bag together. I'm lining up my ruler with the edge of the block. I can feel that. I'm going to do the same along the top. Let me trim that. And then we'll turn it and we'll trim the other side. Same thing, I'm going to feel the edge, feel where the top is, and then trim. Let's measure this and see how this came out. It is 8 1/4 by 4 1/4. That's the measurement for my front bottom piece. The top piece I'm going to cut a little bit differently. I just need to get this out. It can be longer than the bottom piece, don't worry about it. Cut right along the edge of the fabric there, right along the top. So you can see it's longer than my bag, but that's okay. We're going to attach our zipper. Here's my zipper. You have to think about which way you want your bag to open. I want the zipper pull on this side. I'm right-handed. If you're a lefty, you can put it the other direction. That's one thing that's nice about making your own bags. This is the right side of the zipper. Treat it like a piece of fabric. We're going to place right sides together, and I'm going to go ahead and pull this in a little bit. I don't want to accidentally run it off the end. I'm going to flip this right sides together. I'm going to grab some clips. You can also use pins. Clip this on, and we'll work around this on the sewing machine. You can see my zipper's plenty long, which is exactly what I want. It's really hard to work with a zipper if it's the exact size of your piece because this is difficult to work around, but you can do that. Let's go over to the sewing machine. I'm on a Juki QVP. I have a 1/4 inch guide foot on. You can use a regular straight stitch. This is a by Annie zipper. You don't need a special zipper foot, nothing fancy. Put a straight stitch into this. You can see this is in the way. I'm going to raise my foot, pull it past the presser foot, and then sew until I get to the end. Here's a regular foot with no guide that comes with this machine. This is the, looks like T foot. I use this for the zigzag stitching, which we're going to do. You've got your zippers sewn on. You're going to want to flip it and iron it. Let me show you this from the back. It's important which way you press it. The fabric is going to want to go this way, but you want to push it down like that. So you're seeing the whole entire zipper. So you want to press it down like that. So from the front, you can run your iron this direction if that makes sense. But press this down like that. You don't have to worry about ironing on the by Annie zippers. They're designed for this. Here's the front. Here's the back. You can see it still wants to fold up, but this is pressed down. That's what you want. You want to make sure this zipper is lying flat like this. We're going to put a top stitch on this to help hold the zipper in place. You want it on your fabric as close to the top as you can. What this is going to do is not only make it look nice from the front, but it's going to tack that zipper down along the back. So make sure that that's down all the way. You can match your top stitch thread to your embroidery thread if you want. I've got an off-white beige thread on my machine. I'm good with that. I'm going to leave that. Let's do the top stitch. Here's the edge of the fabric. I'm trying to get as close to that as I can. I'm going to hand crank my needle down. That looks good. I'm in a pretty good spot. Not my best top stitch. It kind of went crooked and sort of went off the tracks. When I flip it around, you can see I did a good job, good job, good job. Oopsie. Good job, good job, good job. So this part didn't get tacked down. You know why? That's the fold of my quilt block. Right where all of these points are joining. Not worried about it inside of the bag. I'm going to leave it. Let's go to the next step. Got your bag top. That's going to go on this part of the zipper. This is why I like this piece to be a little bit longer. If it's exact, you're fussing to match it up and make sure everything is just right. When it's a little bit bigger, make sure it lines up with the zipper. You can trim off the edges. I'm going to angle this toward me and add clips, and we're going to sew this on exactly the same way. So you'll sew it on, flip it, press it, and do your top stitch. I'll go ahead and do that off camera since I just showed you how to do that, and I'll show you what mine ends up looking like. We'll see if I do a better job with the top stitch on this one. This side went really well because I didn't have those extra seams from the quilt block. Looks great. I've got it tacked down nice and flat all the way around. You can see that this is bigger than this, and I have some extra zipper we're going to trim. These zippers are really easy to cut. I'm going to line up the ruler. I'm going to use this rotary cutter. This is my sticky paper, whatever rotary cutter. I cut zippers with that as well. Flip around to the other side. Let's even everything out before we sew the other part of the bag onto it. I don't want a crooked bag. I know this is straight. I'm going to line this up over here. Yep, I can see that. I can feel the edge of this here, and then I have some extra there. So my bag is a little bit on the crooked side. Let's straighten that out. That's better. Here's my backing piece, which you can tell is plenty big enough. I don't have to worry at all about this not fitting. I'm not very scientific about how I do things a lot of times, so it's nice and big. I'm going to have extra. I lay it down and I trim it to match. Now that I know everything is straight, make sure this is nice and flat. Remember, you've got that zipper there. I want to watch out. I don't want to lose my zipper. We'll go ahead and trim this side. This side can be hard to trim because the zipper's kind of in the way. Just do your best. All of our pieces are cut. We're adding our little loop. When we put our bag together, these are my lining pieces, bag front, bag back. We're going to do right sides together, and we're going to put the loop on the inside. This is much too big. Do you see how big that is? I need to think about where I want that to sit, how tight I want it. Do I want it right there along the stitch line? Probably right about there. And where do I want that? This is the front of my bag. If I have this hanging around my wrist and dangling, I want the loop here. Where do you want your loop? You can put it here. If you want two loops and you want this to be a shoulder bag, you can make two of these and put them up here. I don't want to have it right on the zipper. I think I'm going to place it here, right above the zipper, and I want about that much sticking out. Play with it, figure out where you want to put that, about how long you want it. I think like that. I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. That looks good. I'm going to trim that. I'm going to put a clip right there so I don't lose it. See how it's angling toward the center? Don't angle it outside your bag. It's got to point toward the center of your bag. And your zipper needs to be open. You don't want to sew this like this. You'll get caught on the zipper anyway. But leave it open. It'll make it easier to turn your bag. Right sides together. Front of my bag, that's the backing. I want to see the lining. And for my bag, I've got bright yellow lining. I'm going to use clips. You can use clips, you can use pins, whatever you like. Make sure everything is nice and lined up. Go all the way around your bag. I'm going to put my 1/4 inch guide foot back on my machine. We're going to stitch all the way around the bag, and then we're going to go around it again with a zigzag stitch. Normally when I make bags, I do the straight stitch all the way around, and then I put it through my serger. But I'll show you how to use your machine that has a zigzag stitch, because I know a lot of people don't have a serger. Double check, make sure your zipper's open, and I'm going to sew this zipper side up. It doesn't really matter where you start. I usually start at the bottom. 1/4 inch seam allowance. My stitch length is 2. I like to use a smaller stitch length for bags because you're going to be using it and I don't want it to fall apart. Here we go. You've got a lot of fabric under here. You might need to lift or adjust your presser foot. This is a purple thing, or you can use a stiletto. Use something to help you get it started. I'm coming up on the zipper. Just use a little bit of extra care. It looks like it's a little crooked, which it's fine. This is a little tiny bag. I'm not too worried about it. I need to get that pushed underneath and go slow. I always go slow over zippers. I'm going to stop here. I'm actually going to go backwards across it again. And now forward and keep going all the way around. Coming up on the zipper again. This is the open edge of the zipper. I just try to hold it together about where it would be when it closes. I've got a lot of bulk here. I'm going to need something to help me get this through. I'm going to use the purple thing again. If it's not perfect, it's okay. Straight through, backwards, and forward again. You can see I just stitched that flipped down. I can fix it if I want, but I'm going to leave it. See how I caught this and it flipped down? It's fine. It's not going to matter. That's because I've got that little loop here. You can see there's my loop for my strap. That's what made that run off course. I have a lot of bulk there. I'm going to switch the foot on this machine, and we're going to put a zigzag stitch around the outside of this to help keep these edges nice and clean. This is the machine I use for making rope bowls. I have a nice little cheat sheet here. You can see this says 5x2, 4.4x2, 4x3. These are stitch widths and lengths. I use this to determine which zigzag stitch I want to use when I make rope bowls, because I use different sizes of ropes. But this also comes in handy for projects like this. I'm looking at this. You've got your bag here. You can fold it in half. This is 4.4x2. Kind of look at that. That's a little small. 5x2. That looks pretty good. 6.4x2. I think I'm going to go with a 5x2. Let's adjust my stitch. I need to hit number 4. And I said 5x2. 5x2. I want it wide enough to run on and off the raw edge of my fabric and give it a nice clean edge on the inside of my bag. I've got that set up. Not only does this help your bag get a nice clean edge to it, it also gives it one more extra level of stitching to help keep it secure. I'm lining up the edge of my bag with this little notch that's in my presser foot. You can see where the needle is. It's right off the edge of the fabric. I'm wrapping the fabric edge as I go with my zigzag stitch. We'll go slow. This is a great stitch length. My needle's hitting just inside my straight stitch, and then it's just off the edge of my bag. Take your time with this when you're stitching. Of course, it's going to be sped up on camera, but when you're doing this at home, give yourself plenty of time. Don't be in a rush. Here's what that looks like. See how it goes right onto your bag and then off the edge? It helps wrap the edge of your bag. If you don't have a zigzag stitch and you think your bag is going to be used a lot, go around it twice with a straight stitch just to give it a little bit of extra stability. Clipping the corners is optional. If you want to clip corners to get rid of some of the extra bulk, you can.
You want to try and not clip your zigzag stitches. You could always clip the corners before you do your zigzag stitches. I don't always clip my corners. I find that even when I try to clip the corners as much as I can, when I flip my bags around, they still have rounded corners, and they look great. It's not a big deal. This one's pretty well stitched over. Let's go flip our bag right side out. Really easy to turn these right side out because you've got a zipper. You want to go ahead and flip it, and then poke out the corners carefully. And then what I like to do after the whole thing is flipped out, I take it to my ironing board, make sure it's nice and flat, and I give it a good press. So I'll finish turning this and flipping it. I'll give it a good press, and then we'll come back and see what it looks like. Here's the back. I'm going to put my little wrist strap clip on there. Ready to go. Are you ready to see the front? There it is. This came out really cute. Look at that. Your zipper's nice and secure because you sewed over it a bunch of times. It's got two kinds of lining on the inside because it's a scrap fabric project. Your edges are nice and clean. If you've got any extra threads, of course, you can trim them. But you put your zigzag stitch over it to make it really nice and secure. This is a perfect bag for running to the grocery store, maybe walking the dog. Just kind of grab it, loop it, you're good to go. If you don't like the wrist strap, you don't need to make the wrist strap. You could also put two of these right on top and make this a little shoulder bag. Let's get a measurement on this. This bag came out about 6.5 and just over 7 inches. This is a great little girl purse too. You could do this with solid fabric if you didn't have the scraps to make the pinwheels. You could do embroidered applique if you've got some favorite applique. You could do a solid piece of fabric, put somebody's name on it. Think about the files you have, the projects you have. You can use blocks from some of your favorite quilts, embroidered blocks. Do this in Christmas designs and make a great Christmas present. It would make a great Halloween bag. You get the idea. What's fun about projects like this is you can make them work with what you have. I had scrap zipper, leftover fabrics, cut-offs from the quilt blocks, and I made a nice little bag. I hope you've enjoyed using another way to use your clear blue tiles from Kimberbell and had fun making your small zipper pouch. Comments or questions, please leave them below for me. If there's anything in particular you'd like to see in the future, please let me know. I'll try to come up with some more fun projects for our clear blue tiles. I have a clear blue tiles playlist that's linked below with all the clear blue tiles videos. I also have product links below the video. I am a Kimberbell affiliate. If you use my link to purchase anything through Kimberbell, I get a small commission. I really appreciate that. That helps me buy things to use for the channel. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Enjoy making your zipper bag. I hope you've liked this project, and I will see you next time. Bye, everybody!